Does anyone listening know what the snowball effect is? Have you heard of it before? Maybe you've experienced it. It's when you have a small problem initially, and then over time it proliferates, it expands, and all of a sudden, you've got a pretty big problem. It happened to me the other day. My Tim Anderson, Tony La Russa video. I did not expect that to receive the feedback that it got. I thought it was just a small video, small problem, and it turned into a pretty big thing on Twitter. Something that I didn't expect or imagine to happen. Maybe in your life it happens too. You tell a little white lie. Over time it proliferates, it gets bigger and bigger, and then eventually you're telling a completely different lie that's very big that could come back to bite you. It happens all the time to many people. It's happening right now to the Chicago Bears. They aren't necessarily lying to themselves, but there are a bunch of small problems that have added up incrementally to create one big problem. And now they're 5-4 after losing on Sunday. I'm not going to sit here and bash one specific part of the team or say it was this guy's fault, it was his fault, it was their fault, because it wasn't. It wasn't one person that led to the Bears losing, that's led to the Bears get on this losing streak. It's not one person. It's not even a couple of people. It's the entire offensive unit from top to bottom, from coaching to players to personnel. All of it has come together to lead to the Bears losing a lot of games. Let me explain. The offensive line is an issue. If you've been living under a rock for the past couple of weeks, you probably already know that. The line is beat up. Guys have COVID. Guys are hurt. The Bears are on their third string in some cases. You're not going to win many football games when you have no offensive line. Go talk to Deshaun Watson about that in Houston. Running for his life on every play, still putting up good numbers, but always running away from the pass rush. The Houston offensive line has been depleted for years. Nothing's been done about it. And they wonder why they haven't won a Super Bowl or why they've never been considered a good contender. Because of their offensive line, they're effectively out of the playoff race. And of course, Bill O'Brien made it worse this year by trading away offensive weapons like DeAndre Hopkins. The Bears are in a similar boat. Everything starts with the offensive line. If you can't protect your quarterback, how do you expect him to make any throws? If he's constantly throwing under duress, how is he supposed to succeed? That's for Mitch and for Nick, both of them. How are they supposed to succeed on high levels when they have 2 seconds to throw the football? To nobody, too, and we'll get to that. So the offensive line can't block. Quarterbacks can't play because of it. Nick Foles has done absolutely nothing since he's come in for Trubisky. I will fight you tooth and nail on that. And it's so funny. Everybody who said bring in Foles, those same people are now saying bring back Trubisky. Exactly. You got what you wished for. I said it the day they brought in Foles. Be careful what you wish for. You're essentially asking for a career-long backup, stopgap quarterback to replace a young guy who still could develop. What did you expect to happen? Everyone thought it was going to be Nick Foles 2.0. More of the Phillies special, more of the Super Bowl MVP. Newsflash, not going to happen. That was a fluke. How do people not understand this? Even to this day, it was a fluke. He had a good team around him. Decent enough receivers. Good situation, good coach, good play calling. And it all worked. It's like Jared Goff in LA. If Jared Goff was not with Sean McVay, he'd be a horrible quarterback in the NFL. And even to this day, Jared Goff is not the best quarterback in general. But he is where he is because of his coach. Nick Foles was where he was because of the coaching around him. Frank Reich, Doug Peterson, decent weapons, Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, good run game. That's why it worked. And it was foolish of people to believe that would just transfer right over to the Bears. That was the wrong assessment to make. I'll never understand why people even thought that. That was 2017. It's 2020. And the Bears are a much different team than that Philly team that won the Super Bowl. Much different. Different coaching, no weapons, no O-line. Nick Foles was benched last year for Gardner Minshew. Remember it. Remember that. How would you expect a guy who was just benched on the Jaguars last year to come in and replicate 2017? That was a false hope and a false promise that laid in the minds of many Bears fans. It shouldn't have ever been there. You should have never thought Nick Foles would replicate what he did in the past. That was a fluke. Great system leads to great results. The positive is that on Sunday he didn't throw a pick, unbelievably, but he's not a good quarterback and he's not the answer to this team. I already read an article yesterday saying that the Bears are in the quarterback market come next year. Yes, they are. If you believe Nick Foles is going to stay here for next year and be the starter, you've been misled. You really want that to repeat for a 16-game season? You want that to be your franchise quarterback? The Bears will never win anything with Nick Foles as their starter, plain and simple. That's not all on him. There are other issues within this team that's going to cause that to happen. No one to throw to, no O-line, bad coach. But if everything else was perfect even, Nick Foles is not the guy. He's too old, getting older by the year. And each year that goes by, he's further and further removed from that Super Bowl MVP season. It's wrong to think that that magic could be replicated now or next year or in a couple of years. We know what Nick Foles is. He's a career-long backup. Let's treat him that way, right? Let's classify him that way. Let's not put him on this pedestal and say automatically that he's going to be the guy. That's a false assumption. Then we get to the fact that he has no one to throw to. No Bears quarterback has anyone to throw to. Allen Robinson is the only true weapon on this team. That's a fact. Bears Twitter, Bears fans could say, Darnell Mooney's pretty good. Anthony Miller, no, they're unproven. They're unproven. They've done nothing to prove to me that they are the receivers of the future. The Bears have one bona fide wide receiver. That's it. One target to throw to. When defenses know that, how do you think they're going to line up? And then what? You're going to have to throw to Riley Ridley, Mooney, Miller. When you look up and down this depth chart, there isn't much there. That's an unbiased opinion. That's the truth. Bears fans will say Mooney is the future. Miller is the future. We've waited long enough for Anthony Miller to develop. The same could be said for Riley Ridley, Javon Wims. All of those guys had so much clout around their name when they debuted, and over the past couple of years, but what's really happened with them? Give me numbers. Tell me what they've really done. The answer is nothing. It would have been nice to see them develop, and the Bears wouldn't have this problem, but the truth is, they're not those guys. None of them are the next Alshon Jeffrey, so stop comparing them to Alshon Jeffrey or other great Bears wide receivers. It's unfair and it's wrong. The Bears have one weapon. They have an offensive line that can't protect the quarterback. The quarterback himself is old and had success in the past because of a fluke. And then to top it all off, you have a head coach who can't run an offense. Matt Nagy can't do it. And we said this 2 weeks ago. This isn't new. We said on this show, for the Bears to rebound, what they have to do is this. Get a couple of more weapons, maybe another receiver, maybe some O-line help. And they need to make sure Matt Nagy is not calling the offense. Give up the play calling. Those were two simple fixes. The Bears would not be 5-4 if they had listened, but they didn't. Matt Nagy apparently said today he's open to giving up play calling. And in an article by Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times, he said, quote, "It seems Nagy rather would get fired than give up play calling, and maybe it's time for him to choose. He's an offensive specialist running an offense that's inept. No coach keeps his job in that scenario." Spot on. He does have to choose. I hope he chooses correctly. I like Matt Nagy. I don't think he's a horrible person. I think he's a good football mind. He just can't run an offense. That's all. He is a winning head coach. That's a fact. In my opinion, there's no point in firing a winning head coach unless you have cause. And Matt Nagy is giving the Bears a cause. Don't do it. If Nagy gave up play calling, gave it to Bill Lazor, offensive coordinator, I think there'd be a big shift in this team's momentum. It'd be like a breath of fresh air. It'd be new, it'd be quick, it'd be agile, it'd be different. Sometimes different and change is good. For this team, it's obvious that it needs to happen because the same old hasn't been working. Last week, we compared Matt Nagy to Mark Trestman. That's a fair comparison. Mark Trestman ran a better offense here in Chicago than Matt Nagy has. Think about that. For everybody who came after Mark Trestman, said he shouldn't have been here, said he was a horrible head coach, where are you now? What happened? I remember so many people wrote columns. They contributed. Trestman's horrible. Get him out of here. And sure enough, he was fired. But believe it or not, he ran a better, more cogent offense than Matt Nagy, who's supposedly an offensive guru. What does that tell you? See, for me, that's writing on the wall. If someone told me, hey, you're talented, but there's another guy who's done much better than you, why don't you just give up your play calling? You could keep your job. I'd rather do that. If Matt Nagy gives up play calling, that doesn't mean that he's conceding. It doesn't mean that he lost. It means that he's willing to listen. He's open-minded. He wants to do this for the good of the team. It's a team game. He wants to do this for the good of the franchise. There's nothing negative or wrong or weak or soft in giving up play calling to help out the greater good. I would never call that weak or soft, and no one else would either. People would be happy. And you'd still be the head coach, and you'd still get all the credit when the Bears rebound and win. It's actually a win-win scenario. I don't get why that's not being talked about, or why Matt Nagy is so reluctant to do it. I know the offense is your bread and butter, but right now there isn't much butter on that bread. You've done nothing to prove to anybody that you know how to run an offense, so give it up. We won't see that as soft or inept or weak. We'll see it as, hey, this guy prioritizes the franchise. He wants wins, plain and simple. That's a selfless move. That's something that I think would get a lot of praise and respect. And if the Bears win, he gets the credit. It's a win-win scenario. It's great. Why won't it happen? But remember, it's not just a Matt Nagy problem. This is the snowball effect for the Bears. No offensive line, so the quarterback's always running. The quarterback in Nick Foles isn't mobile, number one, and isn't good, number two. And when Nick Foles goes back to pass, he has no one to throw it to, besides Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney is not good yet. Anthony Miller is on the verge of being a bust. And Javon Wims is suspended. And when he comes back, it won't matter. He makes no differences or contributions to this team. That's the state of the Bears right now. Easy fixes, yes. But acknowledging the problem, that's the issue. The Bears could have gone out. They could have gotten a receiver or two at the deadline. Maybe an O-lineman. Maybe Matt Nagy could have said, I want to give up play calling. And everything would be fine. And they still have time to do that. I know it's late. I know we're 9 games in, but it's not over yet. Changes can be made for the good of the franchise. The question is, are the Bears willing to do it? Is Matt Nagy willing to admit, I can't really run this offense. I'm going to give it to Bill Lazor. I'll still be the head coach. Are the Bears themselves willing to admit that they don't have the personnel to win football games offensively? Are they willing to admit it and acknowledge that they don't have a line, they don't have a quarterback, and they don't have weapons? Judging by how things have gone so far, they're not ready. And until they're ready, you're going to see the same result week in and week out. And it's going to get old, and it's going to get boring, and it's going to get frustrating. But that's the state of the Bears right now. Simple fixes for this team. They exist. They've been out there for weeks. But in order to fix this team up, you have to be willing to put in the effort and be willing to acknowledge that there are issues. Right now, the Bears aren't doing that. Until they do, don't expect much from this team. It's a shame, too, because they have one of the best defenses again in the NFL, and they can't even take advantage of it. If the Bears just had a competent offense, they'd be Super Bowl contenders. I'm not talking about Patrick Mahomes' offense. I'm talking about just regular offense. Just a decent quarterback, maybe a decent offensive line. 2 good receivers, not 1. And they'd be okay. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Unfortunately, they're 5-4. And the problems we just described and mentioned are taking over this team. They're proliferating. It's a snowball effect. They were small at the beginning of the year. No one really talked about them, acknowledged them too much. But as the season progressed and progressed, they became bigger and bigger problems. And now they've taken over the team. That's the snowball effect. That's what's happened to this Bears team. Until they realize, until they acknowledge changes need to be made, it's going to be the same old Bears. And it's a shame because on paper, this team had the potential to go to the Super Bowl. More to come here on Sports Talk Chicago. My interview with Dave Wills comes up next, so stay tuned. Hey, do you want to make some money this weekend? What if I told you that I could offer you $250 free to bet on any game you want, including the Bears game? Here's what you have to do. Go to sportstalkchicago.com/cash, sportstalkchicago.com/cash. Illinois residents only. You must be 21 plus. you can get $250 free to bet on any game you want. Bears-Vikings, Monday night, college football this weekend. It's that simple. All you have to do is go to sportstalkchicago.com/cash, sportstalkchicago.com/cash. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.